Good afternoon, good morning, depending when you're watching the rerun of today's Expresión Storytelling Showcase. I think this is the fourth storytelling showcase that we have. I'm Ivan Ramirez, and I just want to welcome you all to today's webinar and showcase. We, over the past 3 months, since February, in partnership with Storytellers for Change, we have been working with a group of 16 storytellers. And today they get to share what they have been working on, their experience for today. But before we get started, I want to acknowledge the land in which this work has started as the traditional home of the Coast of Salish people, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations, as well as the Missouri, Ottawa, Kansas, and Osage, Shawnee, and Sioux. We pay respects to all the indigenous people and take this opportunity to thank the original stewards and storytellers where this work started. Before we keep going, I also want to introduce and give a little, so he can give us a little bit of a brief overview of what Expresión is, our Expresión Storytelling Fellowship. So I would like to invite Luis to the stage.
Hi, Ivan. Thank you so much for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to this wonderful event of celebration and where we get to amplify the stories of our incredible Expresión Fellows. I'm Luis Ortega. My pronouns are he and them. I'm the founder and director at Storytellers for Change, and we are driven by our mission to work with youth, educators, and organizations to imagine, craft, and share stories to build an equitable world. Fundamentally, that means that we believe in the power of people and the power of stories. And this is why we are so proud that 4 years ago, we co-founded the Expresión Storytelling Fellowship in collaboration with the Latinx Education Collaborative to celebrate, affirm, and amplify the role of Latinx educators as storytellers in our schools and communities. Now, in our fourth cohort and nearing our fifth year, this fellowship continues to be a radical space for deep reflection, community building, and narrative transformation. As we journey alongside our newest cohorts of educators from Missouri, Illinois, Connecticut, California, Indiana, Louisiana, and Washington, we are reminded of the sacred responsibility we play as storytellers. In a time marked by scarcity, othering, and hate, our stories ground us in connection. They remind us of our power and call us back to hope, feeling, and action. This is the work for us to feel, to remember, to heal, to speak, to imagine, and to change the narrative together. So allow me to just take a moment to thank our collaborators, Ivan, and the many others at the Latinx Education Collaborative who make this possible. And of course, our incredible fellows. You have my heart, you have my commitment, and I'm so grateful to be in this journey with all of you. Now I have the privilege and opportunity to invite our very first fellow who will be sharing their story with us. I'm going to briefly introduce now Juan Rangel Jr., a lifelong Kansas Citian and seasoned community leader whose career spans education, civil rights, and nonprofit partnerships. With a heart for collaboration and a motto for Adelante con ganas, Juan brings people together to dream, to build, and to create more equitable systems, especially for our youth. Juan, bienvenido. No podemos esperar a escuchar tu historia.
Muchas gracias, Luis. Gracias, Iván, también. Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Juan Rangel. I'm going to share my story tonight called A Transformed Man, Una Obra en Tres Actos, or a play in 3 acts. So let me set the stage in my introduction here for you. So let me take you to another stage, one created by a playwright named Thornton Wilder. His play, Our Town, is simple on the surface, no elaborate or flashy costumes, just a small town in Grover's Corner and the ordinary lives of its people. But what makes our town powerful isn't what happens, it's what we notice when we slow down. The morning routines, the quiet dinners, the questions we forget to ask until it's too late. It's a story about life, love, death, and everything in between, about how the most ordinary moments often carry the deepest meaning. The play has always stayed with me since high school. An English teacher asked me to read it, and then as a young adult, I got to see the play and thought it was powerful. It's not for just what it says, but for how it makes me feel. It reminds me of my own town, my own familia, my own journey. So I decided to tell my story like our town. Una obra en tres actos, a play in three acts, a play about a transformed man. You'll hear the same themes: daily life, love and marriage, death and legacy. You'll also hear me do it in Spanglish, a little Spanish, a lot of English, but I'll also do my best to translate. You'll see the cast of characters that shaped me and maybe catch a reflection of your own story along the way. Because just like our town, this is all about us, about what we carry, what we question, who we love, and how we change. So let me start with Act One, La Vida Diaria, which is the daily life. Like in our town, the play, we start with the ordinary: the desayuno with arroz y leche, the breakfast with rice and milk, the quiet hustle of mi mama cooking and cleaning house, the way el sol hit my father's face, the sun hit my father's face when he came home smelling like machine oil, as he was a machinist, but he also had hope. Mi vida began con ellos. It started with them. My life started with Raquel y Juan from Silao, Guanajuato. Two people who brought their dreams across a border and poured them into a small apartment in Kansas City. And like in our town, the beauty was in what seemed plain. Mi mama was the heartbeat. Mi papa, he was the structure. Gender roles, a lot to question there, but it was clearer than my abuelita's caldo de pollo. It was clearer than my grandma's homemade chicken soup. I didn't question the script. Men worked, women served, kids behaved. Yo era el hijo bueno. I was the good son. I knew my lines, but even then, even in silence, I was noticing, watching how my mom asked for the car keys to go shopping, watching how my dad's love came with rules, and something inside of me whispered, "Y si no quiero hacer el papel que me dieron? What if I don't want to keep the same script?" So now let me go into Act Two, Amor y Matrimonio. Love didn't come with a guitarrón. It didn't come with a big bass guitar. It came con risas y platos sucios. It came with a lot of laughter and a lot of dirty dishes. It came with Yvonne, my late wife, telling me, "Don't get used to that. I served you food so that they can see I love you, but don't expect it all the time." She was the first one to call me out, the first to show me that partnership didn't mean obedience. Our love wasn't perfect, but it was real. She gave me Juanito, my son, my first glimpse of unconditional love. Then came grief. Yvonne passed, and the silence that followed was heavy. But silence, I've learned, teaches also. It taught me a lot. Years later, I met Denise. She's soft spoken, but sharp, nurturing, but not a pushover. Denise taught me how to be, not just act like a man, but she taught me un hombre who listens to be that, one who apologizes, one who folds laundry without expecting applause. We built a blended familia: Juanito, Jake, her, me, our own cast of characters. And with every "how was school?" and "don't forget the trash," we wrote our script. A little chaos, a lot of cariño, a lot of love. The third act. The third act is Muerte y Legado, which is death and legacy. If you know our town, you know Act 3 breaks you open. Death arrives not with drama, but with clarity. I think about death, claro que sí, of course I do. I've stared it down with cancer. I've walked beside it in loss. But mostly I think about what I'll leave behind. I hope someday my son say, "Mi papá lived con ganas." I lived with will and desire. That I was present. That I loved Denise with full hands and open heart. That I left behind something better than what I received. Not out of resentment, but out of reverence. Because my parents gave me all they could. I want to do the same. Inside me, like in the cartoon, if you've seen it Inside and Out, I carry my emotional cast, alegría, joy, who wakes me up singing rancheras every morning. Tristeza, which is sadness, who visits late at night. Miedo, fear, who double checks my daily. And coraje, anger, who still wants to prove something. But now I give each one their time on the stage. No shame, just truth. And the truth is this: I'm still becoming, and I'll repeat that. I am still becoming at 57 years of age, still catching myself mansplaining and then biting my tongue, still relearning how to love without control, still messing up, still apologizing, still showing up. So if this is our town, then let it be told con sabor y soul, with taste and soul. Let the audience know that I lived each act fully. Act one, act two, act three. Even when the lights dimmed and when my final curtain falls, I hope that the world says, ese hombre, this man, era transformed, that I was transformed. And before you walk away from my story, aquí está tu regalo. Here's the gift that I leave with you tonight. Cherish the ordinary. The arroz con leche, the smell of machine oil on my father's shirt, the quiet strength of a mother's hands. Those aren't background details. That's the story. That's the beauty. Don't be afraid to question the script. We're all handed roles. Some fit, some don't, but transformation starts when you ask, what if I don't want to write or write a different part? What if I do want to write a different part? Love isn't perfect, but it's real. It shows up in unexpected places, through grief, through blended families, through someone handing you a plate and saying, this one's not for you. Pay attention. Love will grow you if you let it. Legacy. Legacy isn't one speech at the end. It's the daily, I got you. The folding of the laundry, the folding up when it's hard. It's how we treat people when no one's watching, especially the people who raised us and the ones we're raising now. And finally, keep becoming. We're never done. I'm still learning not to mansplain. I'm still learning how to sit with tristeza or sadness and not rush her off the stage. Still catching myself trying to control what I should just love. Because in this life, in this obra, in this play, in my play, every emotion gets a role. Every act matters. And if we're lucky, and I mean this, if we're really lucky, we get to transform again and again before the final bow, just like Madonna. Muchas gracias, and thank you for listening to me tonight.
Juan, bravo y felicidades. Thank you so much for the gift of your story and your reflections. And if it's okay with you, I have a brief question,
Sure.
and we just have a moment here before we introduce our next storyteller. I know it was a process for you to engage in the writing of your story. And I'm wondering if there's any advice that you may have for anyone out there who knows they have a story, but are perhaps struggling to find the space and time and perhaps even confidence to say, I can write this.
Yes, Luis, gracias. So I'm grateful to the LEC for this opportunity. I actually had, her name is Sandy Snook, who sent me this link actually and said, you should consider doing this, because she and I had walked and I had told her some about my life. And so I took the step and I jumped in, and as you know, a little fearful because I'm not a writer. But this really kind of has given me that opportunity. My wife has often told me, you should write your story. And now this has given me las ganas to do it, to put it out there. And so I'm grateful for all these people, yourself and Yvonne, for that opportunity. And of course, my other fellows that I had the opportunity to get to know and hear their stories. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan. Again, congratulations. Ahora tengo el honor, now I have the honor of introducing our next Expresión Fellow, Paola Silva, who is a ceramic artist and educator whose work is rooted in healing, cultural memory, and connection. Raised in Kansas City and shaped by her experiences as a young Latina, she now guides others through creative expression as a way to navigate the beauty and complexity of our lives. Paola, bienvenida. Welcome.
Hola, hola. It is an honor to be here on the edge of Sand Creek, Denver, Colorado for a shared travel. And yeah, it's an honor to share this poetic letter to the expression of our inner landscape across generations. This story is called Ancestral Home. The ancestors carried a compass of the sacred fours. The four directions, the four elements, the four seasons, the four stages of life, the four human needs. These were the resources, and there were no borders. As we live on, this compass carries through our stories, cycling forth, I return home. I remember the touch of water when it re-met my skin in childhood. The environment that surrounds my memories is a sea of montañas. I now reclaim my educational boundaries and aspirations at the peak of the mountain. As a youngster in a historically repetitive education system, mi cuerpo pequeño tenía miedo de los tiburones dentro de las escuelas. Cada escuela ladraba mensajes and whispered lessons for my future self. My mother birthed 4 fires, her children, her heart, her pack. We were a flock of migrating flames in early childhood, experiencing a constant change in direction through relocation. Cada escuela carried a prompt that I am still uncovering and discovering, and each experience was a viaje entre las montañas of my mental arena, learning how to breathe underwater with a backpack on. Each season felt like the death of a stage in the life of a new. My ma took on the biggest load of all, so she gathered her flames from our homeland and became sea people to survive. We went from tierra y montaña to venados y leones in search for resources to fulfill our needs. We learned to love the land of peace and war. As much as it weighed with communication of a language barrier, consumed belief, trust, and faith, gasping for air in a construct of instability, I grieved. When I was a minnow in a tiburones world, I learned to camouflage my flame, so when the adolescence made its way, I became one with the deer people. I thought I had the emotional tools when the 13th school came. Then my familial flock of deer siblings and Mama Lion faced another war. It resulted in yet another relocation. The houseless shelter carried the weight of hurt tiburones, confused minnows, growing deers, and voiceless lions. The venado within me had to take a leap of blind faith. I collected my sack of coping mechanisms, packed my faith in my family's healing separation into my Dickies backpack next to the 4 pairs of clothes I repeatedly wore, and moved into my friend Tu Tring's family's house for a month while I waited my home with my own flock to be ready for our return. Tu Tring's family was a pack of Vietnamese tigers living on the edge of a busy forest. I learned new ways in the light of another culture apart from my own. I learned that each family has communication dynamics with another that only they could understand, their own dialogues of approaching coexistence together, their own interrelatedness entre sus paisajes of belief systems and opportunity. They spoke little to no English, but I still understood their language and they mine. Her parents called me daughter. When I returned to my house with my family after the shelter, the school that had abandoned us due to an imaginary county border allowed us to return. They labeled us into the McKinney-Vento program for homeless students. A lack of home is what the word homeless felt like. A lack of home brought me to question the 4 human needs. The 13th school is when I found an urgency to flee a failed education system, so I did what I needed and graduated early. I took a month-long trip to Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico, and reconnected with my venado family. I had never felt so close and so distant from both places at once. I had never felt so strong and weak at once. I had never felt being this lost, yet being at home at once. When I returned, I again met a community that showed me their ways and I theirs. a motivating place where every person is creative. This place was the first cosmic classroom, synergetic studio that I guided others in. Places from people from all 4 stages of life I taught. I found the 4 stages of life here. The children guided me into slowness, pacing, and trust. The adolescents and adults guided me into reflection, curiosity, and discovery. The elders guided me into retreat, honesty, and surrenderance. The children I teach now remind me of the systems that I grew into. It is my time to go now, to go home. The sound of their voice, the volume of their body language, and their innate presence. They ask me how I learned Spanish, and I say home. El cielo y los cerritos. I remembered my feet and grounded my roots into the water. I remembered that I am both winded land and sovereign sea people now. I remembered that I am both from the montañas and from the tierra of the Midwest. Here is where I realized that the sacred forests have no beginning and no end. I thought that I had to go through and understand it all at once. All 4 elements, directions, seasons, stages of life, and human needs that the ancestors abided by in order to return home. I was not homeless, and my family flock is not illegal from the lineage of our own ancestral stories. Our stories are the return to home, and through sharing of this story, my story, I will return home. Thank you for holding space for me today in my story.
Paola, our stories are our home and our return to home. Thank you for the gift of your poetry. And a dear friend of mine once told me that in the deeply personal, we find the universal. And I just want to offer to you that you're a weaver of what is deeply personal in how you share with us and how you connected us to what are universal themes of connection and cycles. So with you in this moment, I just want to hold space to hear you give voice to how you're feeling after sharing your story.
Thank you. I really appreciate that question and that prompt, and I receive soulfully your response to this. I am feeling very complete, refreshed, released. My hands are tingly. My hands are tingly as I'm outside, and yeah, every time I've taken a moment to hear myself out loud, being alone or being with another, it's reinstating the tunneling impacts bestowed by my past, fusing with my presence in the way that I embody myself, in remembrance that home really is the environment of the heart, and it's influenced by the conditions of one's surroundings, and emotional as well as the social resources that one has. And that's what reading my story out loud feels and sounds like. So I'm really grateful to be here, in expressing our inner landscape as an outlet and an antenna, and to connect with myself. I've been very grateful for this fellowship. Very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paola. I will now pass it on to Ivan to hear from our next storyteller.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you, Paola, for sharing your story. Up next, we have Elizabeth Perez, who grew up in Oaxaca, Mexico, and now supports first-generation and undocumented students as an admissions counselor in Washington State. Her journey from student organizer to higher ed professional is rooted in justice, belonging, and the belief that college should be an open door for all. So I live with you, Elizabeth Perez. It's muted. It's muted. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I will begin now sharing. So, the title of my story is called How Does a Cactus Grow? So, have you ever wondered how a cactus grows? its roots growing in dry valleys, the heat of the desert, and still it grows strong, green, alive. One of the earliest memories is of my mom cutting nopales, her hands moving carefully, peeling back the thick skin, scraping away each thorn until only the soft green center remained. I didn't know it then, but I was learning more than how to make a meal. I was learning how to survive, how to protect what's soft by growing through the hard. At first, I was like that cactus, tough skinned, sharp, guarded. I believed strength meant holding everything in. Then, my dad was deported. I was still young, but that moment stayed with me. Now, when I look back, I realize that that was the nopal, the sharpness of it all, the fear, the silence, the ache. It didn't just hurt, it settled in. Like roots, over time, it kept growing. The memory of nopal didn't just return, it became me. Even then, I was learning how to grow into places that didn't make it easy. Tears were wiped before they could hit the ground. I didn't cry, I couldn't. I toughened up. I kept going because I thought survival meant carrying the pain quietly, even if it means it cut deep. But the feelings didn't disappear, they crept in. Enojo, cansancio. Life became survival, and I became my mother's strength, her second pair of hands. No room to pause. Eventually, I realized I shouldn't live this way. Silence shouldn't be strength. I found my voice in comunidad, in people who understood me without needing every detail. I found it in advocacy, in storytelling, and in those who came before me, like my abuelitas who raised children alone, and my bisabuelo from Tlaxiaco, Oaxaca, who fought for our indigenous land, our language, and our dignity. His fire lives in me. Being undocumented didn't teach me to build bridges. I never needed to build anything to be enough. I used to think I had to explain myself or make myself more acceptable, but I've learned I am already whole. I've always been. I find small joy in the way that the sunlight warms the bedroom carpet or in my quiet wins no one sees. I didn't learn to be strong, I always was. I didn't become resourceful. I always figured it out. And little by little, I gave myself permission to feel, to cry, to get angry, never let rage take over me, to rest, to heal, to be just as I am. Now, I know that I am more than labor, I am more than immigrant papers, I am a mentor, I am a loyal friend. I dance at concerts and yell the lyrics like I mean them. I cry at love songs. I light candles with family on Dia de los Muertos, reminding me of those who left us. There's so much beauty in being undocumented, not because of our struggle, but because of our strength, because of the softness we have learned to protect. We carry two worlds inside us, Mexico y Estados Unidos, and we are building futures that never took us in mind, but we made room anyway. Healing isn't a straight road, it stumbles, it falls, it twists, and it can even fail. But we can keep going and we can try again. And we can rest. Real rest, the kind that reminds us that life is meant more than just survival. I live differently now. I speak my truth. I laugh until I cry. I honor sadness instead of hiding it. I make space for joy, for my roots, and also for those who came before me, those of the land of the Nuyu Savi de Oaxaca. I feel them with me, holding me up when I forget how strong I am. This story is for all the immigrant kids who grew up too fast, and for me, the person I am now, someone who carries two worlds inside her, someone who knows being undocumented was never a limitation. It is the beginning of something powerful. Ooh, excuse me, guys. My voice is resistant. My story is power, and like the cactus, even the sharpest, most wounded parts of me have learned to bloom. not in spite of the desert, but because of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz, for reminding us that we are whole, how we are, just how we are. In this world right now is crazy. There's so much happening that this is the kind of stories that we need to hear to remind us that we are and we are complete. I do have one question. What advice do you have for others that are willing to tell their story but that are hesitant? Why is it important for them to tell their story?
Yeah, I think coming into this, didn't really know that what was going to happen from the fellowship, but I think anyone that is wanting to do the fellowship, I think you definitely should. I love being able to be in the space of many people that shared similar stories to us or myself. And I feel like everyone was very, ooh, I'm still trying to, I can feel myself wanting to cry a little bit, but I feel like everyone was very supportive. You, Ivan, Luis, I learned a lot, and this brought me back to writing and how powerful it could honestly really be. And I forgot that I also love to write. So, yeah, I think anyone that is wanting to do this, give it a shot. Uh, I think it is very beautiful to be with yourself and be able to write and learn more about your life and express it. So, yeah,
No,
that's what I
thank
would say.
And now you have 16 more people by your side, and you don't have to carry anything else alone. That we're right next to you. Thank you for sharing,
Thank you.
Luis.
Gracias, Ivan, and thank you again, Liz. And now I'm honored to introduce our next storyteller and Expresión Fellow, Doctora Tatiana Bustos, who is a community researcher and first-generation Nicaraguan American scholar who believes deeply in the power of lived experience. Her work centers the voices of those often left out of traditional research, reminding us that stories, our real complex stories, belong at the heart of every effort towards social change. Doctora, bienvenida.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tatiana Bustos. Thank you so much for giving me this space to share. So I will be sharing more of a reflection on my story writing process instead of my story, although everything has been so beautifully written and inspirational. So thank you to the other storytellers. So my story was about my own growth and journey and reflecting back on the hopes and the dreams that I had when I was younger, the love that I was given through my family, and the loss that I experienced throughout every step of the way. And as I was writing my story, I recall thinking about how I always felt like I had one story, and that one story is what brought me to the journey where I'm at right now, and what I came to learn in sitting and writing with myself and what I had experienced is that there are multitude of stories that make up who I am. And I think that is difficult to sit with and difficult to unpack. And I only wish I had more time with this fellowship. And so completing the fellowship has been one of the most transformational processes or journeys that I've ever had. As someone who comes from an immigrant background, immigrant family, we don't share our stories very much. And I sit with that, and it's difficult and challenging to move past that. And our stories can be rooted in trauma, but they can also be rooted in success and resilience and in the strengths that we bring. And I love what was just shared, that we have always been whole to begin with. And that's something that I continue to navigate as I try to unpack my story. So I not only started thinking about my journey and the multitude of stories that I carry within me, but how others and my connection with them have really brought me to the place that I am. And so I thought about how storytelling and the stories that we bring are also connected to others' experiences and the other folks' journey in being brought to your lives. And my story was trying to emphasize how strong community can be, And so I often have difficulty in thinking about my story in silo. So my story is not of one, but of many. And that's how I like to lead my work. One of the most valuable aspects of the fellowship was also the community and the storytellers that you've all been hearing here today. I think just hearing, I'm not a writer in thinking about personal connections and personal narratives, but in seeing others' creative writing and Juan's act, that is so creative, and I think it challenged me to think about writing in a non-traditional sense, and that's something that I'm going to leave with after this fellowship. And the last thing that I'll mention is the opportunity for growth that this brought me. So in being the background that I have as a researcher with my family, you bring a mindset in thinking about how you're allowed to share some details versus other details that are allowable to share in terms of norms, and the office setting, not the language that you're sharing. And what this challenged me to think about is thinking more broadly and more flexibly about not having to say things in the way that they're intended to say just to be accepted, and expressing what you're feeling in the moment. And I think that's something I continue to learn about, but I think it's important to understand my story first before I can make change with the stories of others throughout my work. And so that's all I wanted to share in reflections. Thank you.
Dr. Tatiana, thank you for your reflections and for sharing with us. And if it's okay, I'd love to offer a brief comment and then perhaps a question to hear some more insights from you. And you've already shared so generously about what your experience was like in the fellowship and what are some of those lessons that you're taking away from the experience. There's something that you just shared that I feel compelled to uplift, and perhaps you can add some additional insight. I think one of the main lessons that I take away from my work in this fellowship, but also across my career with Storytellers for Change, it's about 15 years now doing this work, that is crucial for us to recognize that as we are seeking to create these spaces to tell these stories and to center lived experience, particularly of communities furthest away from justice and who are systematically impacted, that we live in contexts where dominant culture tells us your story doesn't matter, your voice doesn't matter, and if you are going to speak, you should speak this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to me that you were beginning to give language to the importance of countering that. And I'm wondering if there's any advice that you can offer to future fellows, to others who are in this journey to affirm their voice, to affirm their wholeness, to affirm their lived experience and their humanity. What might you offer, or what advice would you want to extend to those who want to affirm that voice just the way it is?
I think it's really important to be willing to unlearn. I think a lot of us have to function in a society where we have to act a certain way and express things in a certain way, and we start to lose ourselves and how we truly express things in the best, in the way that we know, with our mothers, with our families, with our loved ones, and that starts to get lost. And I think remembering that, as much as you can, like who you really are and how you can truly express yourself, and unlearning that process is important. I think that the sense of safety in the environment that you've all created with the other fellows, and because they bring that, it was a great set of fellows who brought that kind of energy and just being themselves and having that shared identity across all of us is really helpful as well. And so that sense of community, and just willing to accept that sense of community as well, is important.
Yeah, I think that's huge. The willingness also to accept that space Dr. Tatiana, thank you so much
Thank you.
for your work, for your scholarship, for your stories, for your reflections. Ivan, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis, and thank you, Tatiana. We are almost to the end of our storytelling showcase. And to close us off, we have Diana Munoz, who is the founder of this and CEO of the Chicano Center for the Arts, and is a visionary leader who uses art to reclaim narrative and create community. A proud Chicana from Kansas City, Diana builds spaces where culture is celebrated, voices are amplified, and young people are reminded that they belong in every room. Now with us, I'll introduce you, Diana Munoz.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, and thank you to everyone that's here tonight. I am going to share my story called Chicana, and it's in a third person. So, sorry, I might start crying too. So everybody's story was so beautiful. Okay. At 16, she stood quietly on Carnes Boulevard, tucked into the heart of Kansas City, caught between the rhythm of her culture and the pressure to leave parts of herself behind. A young Chicana with dreams she didn't yet have the words for. She felt the weight of invisibility, not because her community lacked brilliance, but because the world didn't always make room for it. Her community is rich in culture, in pride, in the everyday magic of her people, but it was starved of access. Survival came before self-expression. Her father, who came from Guanajuato with dreams of creating, once sketched Chicano-inspired art on scraps of paper during long nights, before those dreams were tucked away beneath the weight of long days and nights at the post office, for which he carried for over 45 years. Her mother, a first-generation Chicana with a heart full of beauty and threads in her hands, had her own quiet hopes of a world of fashion, but survival always came before self-expression. There was no space for the arts when you were trying to protect your children from the world that refused to see them. So how could they help their daughter chase something they were never allowed to touch? They gave her what they could: resilience, love, grit, and the unspoken hope that maybe, just maybe, she could one day create the world they never had. That question lingered for years. It followed her into adulthood, into every space where she saw herself missing. In galleries, in grant rosters, in leadership tables, until one day she decided the answer wasn't waiting to be found. It needed to be built. What began as a search for belonging became a mission. She founded the Chicano Center for the Arts, not just as an organization, but as a living response to every closed door and missed opportunity. She didn't want another young Chicana to grow up believing that art wasn't meant for her. She didn't want another Chicana youth to silence their creativity just to survive. Her story is not a single thread. It's a tapestry, woven from the strength of immigrant dreams, the quiet brilliance of marginalized youth, and the deep, aching call for justice in the arts. It carries the echoes of her parents' sacrifices, the silence of opportunities once denied, and the fire of a voice that refused to stay quiet. Through late nights and open hearts, through partnerships rooted in purpose, paintbrushes dipped in heritage, and an unshakable persistence, she is building what she once longed for: an arts ecosystem where brown artists who come from overlooked but powerfully vibrant communities are not just included, but centered, where mentorship is sacred and where every young creator feels seen, held, and celebrated. She is just not telling her story. She's creating a world where others like her can begin theirs boldly and unapologetically. Now, when a young person steps into a Fourth Friday celebration, they're not just attending an event. They're stepping into a living, breathing reflection of themselves. They see a lowrider gleaming under the streetlights, parked beside an art tent overflowing with color and culture. The air is thick with the sounds of oldies and 90s beats floating beneath the Kansas City stars like a familiar lullaby. As she walks along the paved street, there's a bounce in her step, a rhythm born from recognition. She passes vendor tables filled with Chicano and Latino-inspired creations, handmade with love by people who look like her, speak like her, dream like her. Every scent, every song, every smile reminds her that she belongs. Not in some far-off future, but here, now. And as she dances past the murals, browses through the merch, and laughs with her friends, she feels them, her ancestors. watching, smiling, holding space for her joy. This isn't just a celebration, it's a reclamation, a promise kept, a space woven from generations of resilience, built for her voice, her roots, her future. And maybe, just maybe, that 16-year-old on Carnes Boulevard would have smiled, knowing that one day she'd paint a new world, not only for herself, but for all those coming up from behind, beside, and next to her. Because the canvas is big enough for every story, and hers was just the beginning. Thank you.
Hello. I'm trying not to cry either.
I
You
try
were
not to.
I have one question, because at this time the world is telling us to go back to our shells, to go back into the shadows. What do you tell those that want? Yeah, what advice do you have to those people that want to show and tell the stories and be themselves?
Yeah, so I was actually telling my kids today actually about my storytelling of when I started. I started when I was about 10, and I had some crazy titles like From Russia with Love, and my favorite name was Constance. It was crazy, but it was just going back into a time when I felt free to kind of create, and then somewhere in between being 10 and 40 beyond, I felt I couldn't do it anymore. And I hope everybody that's watching or is ever inspired to write, they just do it. There's never a wrong or a right. It's who you are, and how you speak is yours. And I think that's the most phenomenal thing to have, is to have your own voice, right? It's nobody else's. Nobody else is going to be out there like you. And you are able to give that to other people. Like I've said in the fellowship, if my dad had this group, maybe his life would have been a little different. Maybe our lives would have been a little bit different, because he would have had that community of people that were like him, that grew up like him, that were scared, that had prejudices, that had stereotypes, and he would be able to talk about it and be in community. So I think I am privileged and honored to be a part of this fellowship, and I hope others are able to have this type of experience, even if it's not here in your community. Find the people that you can relate to and take part in.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing and for creating spaces for young Chicanos to grow their voices. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
And now we are at the end of our showcase, but let me bring back Luis for some closing thoughts.
Thank you, Ivan, and to each one of our incredible fellows. I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again, my heart's with you. My commitment is with you. This is generational work. This is community work. I know we heard from some incredible storytellers today. And while it may sound that we heard 5 different stories today, I hope that we can take a moment to understand the vastness of the gift that we just received, the vastness of how many voices, how many generations, how many communities, how many mentors, how many mamás, papás, abuelitos, abuelitas, partners, children, grandchildren. We are interconnected through these stories. Thank you for the gift of saying yes to this opportunity, to being with us as we move through this process. I wholeheartedly believe that our journeys and our stories are not linear, they're cyclical. And every single one of you has touched me deeply in ways that I know have transformed me. So thank you, fellows. And to those who joined us today, thank you for celebrating them along with us in the comments section. To those who will watch this eventually, thank you for continuing to amplify this space. And in the spirit of what Diana offered to us here at the end, please reach out and find time and space to connect with us. But also let us work to create that space. Every single one of us in our own communities, in our own schools, we need each other. So thank you. I hope that you will also join us on Thursday for the second night of our showcase. We have more stories to share with all of you. We have more space and more celebration. And I want to again thank Ivan and our collaborators at the Latinx Education Collaborative. Together, we're going to change the narrative. Thank you, everyone.